Laying the cards out on the table, the fortune teller marveled that she had never before seen a client with such incredible luck. The woman assures the client that even a casual sigh can bring her money. The main character is shocked by the fortune teller's words. She says that the cards show as if all the riches of the world are following her. The girl with blonde hair and in a pretty dress who ordered the apportionment modestly says that a lot is not always good either. Suddenly, placing another card on the table, the fortune teller tells the girl that she will have terrible failures with love. She suggests that it seems that all of the client's love luck seems to have spilled over into money luck. The protagonist is taken aback by this, for she is, as she says, already engaged, and even for love rather than calculation. The fortune teller only dubiously said that things would soon change for her, which threw the girl into a stupor. Slyly folding her arms, the witch says she will not charge the girl, but she'll pay for her favor when she finds out her reckoning was true. Hurrying to the palace, the lady remembers the fortune teller's words. All her love luck has turned into money luck, which means that the engagement will soon be over. She thinks these predictions are bullshit. That woman's words fill the protagonist's thoughts, but she realizes that everything will be normal again when she sees the face of her chosen one, Rehart. The girl notices a speedboat near the palace and suddenly realizes that she has never seen it before. The servants tried to stop Lady Blondine, who was walking purposefully toward her fiancé, saying that she must not disturb him now. But she ignores them completely and upon reaching Rehart's chambers, violently swings the doors open. A young red-haired man with no outer garments, who was next to a certain lady on the bed, looked unhappily through the doorway. He was amazed to see his fiancée Ilya there, her face blank from catching her lover with a strange woman. Approaching the chosen one, Rehart is confused and says that it's not what she thought it would be. The man explains that his sister's guest spilled wine on her dress and just wanted to change. The girl herself was covered in sweat from embarrassment. The protagonist, who was seized by a fierce anger, clenched the fabric of her dress into a fist. She doesn't believe the groom's excuses. Suddenly, Rehart, menacingly approaching Ilya's face, says that although they are engaged, no one gave her the right to enter his room without asking. As he strides calmly around the room, he advises the bride to learn some manners, for she didn't even knock at first. The girl is flooded with tears from the fact that her chosen one also makes her guilty of everything. She doesn't understand how dare he do that to her. While Rehart flirted with his sister's guest, Ilya had no choice but to believe that her love luck was completely gone. The protagonist was born into a wealthy Earl family. Her parents were far from poor as it was, but after her birth, any business they started was an incredible success, and an unknown distant relative left them a huge inheritance. In any competition, Ilya always came in first place. When leaving the house without money, she always found gold coins, and restaurants would serve her for free, saying she was their 10,000th customer. Lady Blondine's life was going perfectly. She even managed to get engaged to her first love. But even though she sacrificed everything for love, her flower never bloomed. She believed Rehart was her destiny, so she discreetly loved him on the sidelines. Even after the engagement, she tried to be perfect for him. After hearing that her lover likes kind and friendly people, Ilya smiled more often and even changed her interests to please him. The latter, however, responded by treating it all as a must. The girl admits that she may not know how to express her feelings, but they grew that love together, even if its dimensions are different. She's sure he wouldn't have agreed to the engagement if he didn't like it. And one day the protagonist realized that she was not trepidatious, but a wimp, and this fiancé brought her only losses. The girl remembered another interesting fact. Come to think of it, Rehart only came to her when he asked for money. Courageously gazing at her reflection in the window, the lady vows to herself that she will no longer be a wimp, but will break off her engagement for starters. The same fortune teller who promised to charge her when it turned out she was right comes to mind. With that in mind, Ilya decided she should stop by the bank. After opening her closet and examining her outfits, Lady Blondine was not satisfied that she didn't even have normal clothes, all tailored to Rehart's tastes. She also decides to stop by the store and pick up some new clothes since she's going out anyway. As she left the room, the girl said hello to her subordinates, whose names were Francis and Malik. One of the boys was amazed when he saw his mistress. The blonde-haired young man with tears in his eyes told the lady that they were very worried about her because she had become very thin, but she assured him that everything was fine. Ilya asked the men where her parents and brother were, to which they replied that they were gone. The protagonist thinks she hasn't seen her family in a while because she's been fixated on Rehart. She makes it a point to meet up later and apologize, but the girl realizes that first she needs to finish what she started. So after a while, she leaves the bank with a huge bag of money. One of the passers-by watching Ilya asked his buddy who she was. The one said in surprise that this lady was from the Blodin family. Another man immediately remembered the surname. This is a family that will remain wealthy even if 3 future generations don't earn a dime. The servant, who was also carrying the mistress's sack, asked her if they had better go back to the manor, but the woman smilingly said no, because they had some urgent business to attend to. The main character went to the same fortune teller she had been to earlier. She, apparently not recognizing a former customer, casually said they were closed. But Lady Blodin, dumping a mountain of gold coins on the woman's table, causing her to call out to God several times, says that she was right. As she sits down at the table, Ilya adds that she will spare no expense, as she saved her life with her divination. Now the girl asks the witch doctor to look at her luck in love again. The woman warns the client that fate can rarely change in a month, but judging by the layouts, she sees a devoted partner by her side. The fortune teller pulls out another card and says that this man's fate is not favorable, but he will meet her and blossom. The astonished heroine jumped in her seat, then asked the prophetess about cheating. Ta says she can't say for sure, however Ilya and the man are both nobles. The woman advises Madame to go west and then, she says, something good will happen to her. After a while in an expensive clothing store, Lady Blodin was incessantly pointing out to the consultants the numerous items she was about to buy. The girl smilingly asks to wrap everything but some dresses for her, for which the store employees thank her for her great generosity. Ilya enjoys shopping again like this, but what she likes best is that she stores to her liking. Upon seeing the lady in her new look, Frances complimented her, saying she was simply gorgeous. Malik, on the other hand, modestly remarked that, as expected, their lady had excellent taste. The main character asked the men if it was hard for them to stand still for so long, to which they replied that they only enjoyed it. The protagonist says she would like to walk around some more, so she offers to buy presents, after which she heads home. But a store employee comes up to her and asks what she should do with the clothes she came in before she bought all new. The heroine's mind immediately goes to her frustrated fiancé, who points out to her which outfit she looks better in. Without thinking long, the girl with her head held proudly up orders the counselor to get rid of all her old clothes, then leaves. Looking at the caskets in another store, she is disappointed because she thought there would be something worthwhile among them. Ilya realizes that she was so fixated on Rehart that she couldn't even pay attention to her family, and because of his advice, she was often frustrated. She decides to apologize to her family by giving them gifts of music boxes, but while looking at one, she notices that it is covered in cheap glass. Suddenly, a handsome young brunette with blue eyes and a serious face walked into the store besides the rich mistress. He was greeted nicely by the saleswoman. While the man was telling the counselor that he would like to buy something as a presentation, Blodin, who was considering him, marveled at how handsome he was. The girl awkwardly corrected her hat because the man's appearance seems a bit soupy to her. But she got a real shock when she saw the saleswoman selling the man the same box of terrible quality for 150 krories. Ilya realizes that this is a fraud, and poor people would never pay that kind of money for such a terrible box. But suddenly the man says he wants to take her, which stuns the young lady, and the counselor happily thanks him. The worker began recommending other music boxes, saying they were new and very popular, but the customer was clearly sick of hearing her stories. The protagonist, meanwhile, got even angrier when the girl told the man that only today the box was on sale at a bargain price of 150 crore. Ilya decided to intercede. She took the jewelry box from the saleswoman and told the stranger that it was no good and he was going to be tricked. The lady who saw the real price tag on the box earlier says that it should cost 60 krol, but the price somehow went up in a couple of minutes. The counselor remained puzzled, and the heroine looked at the man's face, which, for reasons unknown, looked very intimidating. The girl was not frightened by this, but only slightly embarrassed. She thought she might have interfered too rudely, but Ilya is unable to refuse such foolish requests. She gave in like a silly girl and was eventually betrayed. It all reminds her of a time when she used to spend whole nights crying. Gathering all the courage in her, she asked the gentleman if she could offer something, for there was no way she could turn a blind eye to something like this, as the exasperated employee says that all the prices of goods have already been determined by the store owner. As if making the heroine look like an uneducated commoner, the girl assures her that 150 krolas is not expensive, but a very favorable offer. The counselor then called the lady burdened because she herself cannot afford such an expensive item. The lady realized she was being provoked. The protagonist called out to Francis, who was lightning fast to her side. He heard a certain request from his mistress. A short time later, a man bursts into the store and brings Ilya the certificate of purchase, promising that he will send the rest of the documents to her mansion. He tells Miss that his signature is already there and all that's left is for her to sign. The employee perplexedly calls out to the man who is the owner of the store. The owner kisses Lady Blaudine's hand and thanks her for bidding twice the price. He then turns to the counselor and vehemently says that she no longer dares to call him master because he is not now. Pointing to the main character, the man solemnly announces to everyone that the owner of the store will now be her. Showing everyone the paperwork for buying the whole store, Ilya says contentedly that she's in charge now so she can set any price she wants. The girl asked if there was any objection to her wanting to put a price of 60 crore on a casket with substandard glass, to which the employee timidly replied that there was none. Completely oblivious to the man beside her, the new owner ordered her subordinate to start making up new price tags and dust everywhere a bit. A man approached Ilya and bowed, thanking her for her help. The lady was slightly embarrassed by this. She can't believe she's being thanked for something like this. She waved her hands negatively and said her act was pretty hectic. She apologizes for interrupting him. Giving the example of a store employee, the girl says that it is worth it for a person to notice doubt, as he will immediately rush into entreaties, and it is better to cross it at once. Frowning his eyebrows menacingly, the man says he's not used to rejection, though to the heroine, judging by the look on his face, it seems the opposite. But Lady Blaudiene feels that she shouldn't judge people by their appearance. She calmly offers to recommend something to the stranger. The latter agrees, whereupon the hostess presents him with some caskets, saying that they have quiet music in them and are more attractive in appearance. Suddenly, a pleasant smile lit up the man's face. He listened attentively to all of Mistress's recommendations. Ilya even glared at the look on his face like that. She was impressed by this. For a moment ago, he had been in a completely different mood. She assumed he was buying a music box for his fiancée, which made her a little jealous of the recipient of the gift. About to leave the store, the protagonist asks the former owner to take over the store for a while, promising that she will soon find a new manager. But the girl is stopped by a man who holds out 3 gold coins to her. He asks to take this small amount from him as a thank you. The stranger explains that for her recommending the box to him, he feels guilty because he took away a lot of her time. In Ilya's mind, she immediately feels like the good intentions she had faded, so she sternly says she refuses. The bewildered young man wanted to offer her something else, but the woman said he shouldn't because she never expects anything in return. As she settles into her carriage, she adds that he is the first man who has ever tried to reward her with money. But the girl apologizes and says she doesn't need other people's money because her last name is Blaudiene. Being in the carriage, the protagonist, having opened the curtain at the window, looked at the man who remained standing still. Then she remembered the words of the fortune teller who had advised her to go west today, and then something good would happen to her. The lady was not much interested in these predictions. She was more worried about whether her store would do well. Miss Blaudiene ordered the coachman to go home, which he at once complied with, and the carriage drove on. The young man didn't say a word as he watched his mistress's transport moving away. As soon as Ilya was on the doorstep of her home palace, she was immediately greeted by a brother named Henry Blaudiene. He is the unprecedented genius of the entire empire, and to the main character he is the sweetest guy in the world, and big brother. Henry has taken great care of his sister since she was a child, filling in for busy parents. The girl was so worried about her loneliness that she put off going to the academy, and he was always worried about her. They had a great relationship exactly until Ilya fell in love with Rihart. As soon as Henry noticed his sister on the doorstep, he immediately asked contemptuously if she had gone to make up with her fiancé, going down to a relative. The genius of the empire says that the whole family was very worried about her. She came home all tearful, and for a whole month closed in a room. Suddenly, Ilya says she can't stand Rihart. This confused the man. He wonders if she bought all those gifts for him. Miss Blaudiene flatly denies this, as she bought all of this just for herself. Crossing her palms, she tells her brother that she has been very wrong all this time and deeply regrets acting so infantile without listening to anyone. Ilya realizes that she made everyone in the family worry, so she apologizes for everything that happened. The heroine knows her brother hates Rehart, and on reflection, he probably knew from the beginning how things would go. Henley warned her sister that her fiancé was a bad man, and he would hurt her someday, but she was very concerned that her family didn't understand her. The man adjusted his glasses in surprise at his sister's abruptly shifted opinion and asked if she was sick. The heroine chuckled at that one. She knows now that her brother has always cared and worried about her, and it was foolish of her to ignore the feelings of others. Taking a seat on the table and pouring a cup of tea, Henley asked Ilya about what had happened a month ago. The girl recalls that something bad happened to her then. Cheating. She wants to be honest with her family man, but she still finds it hard to talk about it. Nervously clasping her hands together, Lady Blodin asks if they can talk about it later. Noticing his sister's tense state, the genius of the Empire guesses that Rehart has done something wrong. Shaking his leg, Henley admits that up to this time he had been patient because his sister had spoken of her sympathy for the groom. He says he won't be satisfied if Ilya defends him this time too, but the girl interrupts him, saying that she and Rehart had a falling out. The protagonist says she couldn't make a decision for a long time, so she kept quiet, but now she has finally decided that she wants to call off her wedding to him. The brother was not amused by such a statement. He reminds his sister that she has already planned everything for the party. Ta calmly points out that they were doing the preparations anyway, so they can afford a slight delay. Mistress realizes that although she has said it all confidently, she has many more issues to resolve before she can call off the wedding to Rehart. Nowadays, the families of the bride and groom run businesses together and use their heir's engagement as a tool. No matter how great the Blodin family's wealth, the Ishtar Empire is a society built on noble hierarchy, and it's not easy for an earl's family to demand the breaking of an engagement from a marquis. Moreover, the crown princess of the empire is the niece of the Marquis of Tercian. The heroine's family is already not on the best of terms with the imperial family, so because of her accusations, they will definitely be put under attack and suffer great losses. And as a cherry on the cake, the Marquis of Tercian is Henley's immediate superior, and if Ilya isn't careful, this incident is sure to result in retribution. The girl realizes that in order for her to break off the engagement safely, help should be sought from someone of higher status. Suddenly, a subordinate approaches Miss Blodin and holds out a beautiful envelope, saying that she has received an invitation to a banquet from the imperial palace. Mistress hadn't imagined such a turn, so she didn't even try to hide the amazement on her face. She realizes she's got a great chance. Time goes back to the conversation with her brother, where the heroine says she had a fight with Rehart, but right now feels out of place. Henley sighed when his sister said she thought she'd be miserable if she married like that, so she wanted to stop preparing for a while. Getting up from the couch, he walks towards Ilya and promises to contact the Marquis of Tercian, just as the girl suddenly interrupts him. Lady says she personally wants to talk to Rehart and his parents too, and he doesn't have to worry anymore. The man kept a puzzled look on his sister's face for a long time, but still agreed with her. Miss Blodin feels awkward. It's been a long time since she's been able to have such a real conversation with her older brother. Henley notices a piece of jewelry on the table and asks what it is. The protagonist replies that there's nothing outstanding about it. A simple gift. The genius of the Empire emotionlessly took the object in his hands and began to scrutinize it. Ilya reflected on the fact that she shouldn't have bought it since her own kind didn't react in any way. The girl apologizes to her brother for what she'll say next. She says she still has a job left, so she asks permission to leave first. When the sister left, thanking Henley for everything, the latter, looking at his present, smiled and also thanked his relative aloud for her attention. When a quiet night came, Ilya decided to look at the piece of jewelry in the box before falling asleep. It turns out that in a small box was a small gold cufflink, which is worn as jewelry on the edge of a man's shirt sleeve. Suddenly, the heroine remembered the soft white magnolia and one spring day when it had bloomed in the garden behind the imperial palace. And it was on that day that she, walking in the garden, managed to accidentally fall into the water, causing all her clothes to get wet. But an unknown man, whose face the victim could not remember, came to her aid. However, Ilya distinctly remembered the way his hair shone, like the rising sun. It was at that moment she realized she was in love. Then she felt warm and tasted life, and her heart filled with heat. Now it was different. Lady Blodin believed that Rehart would come to visit her at least once. She wanted to hear him repent to her for his act. The girl imagined him dropping tears, asking her forgiveness time after time. But the protagonist can't believe that he didn't even send her a letter, let alone the visit itself. She's angry about it, but she finds some pros. Thanks to him, she was able to get her thoughts in order pretty quickly. Ilya is almost certain that Rehart received the same invitation to the ball as she did. Mistress knows that her frustrated fiancé loves banquets, so his appearance at one is guaranteed. The girl places the box with the man's jewelry on the table, reminding herself that it would be better if she returned it to its owner at once. 4 days later came the day of the banquet, which was held in the luxurious palace of the imperial family. The invited guests were talking among themselves on various topics while drinking expensive alcohol, but their attention immediately turned to the main character. Everyone was amazed by the lady's beauty and asked each other who she was. But then Ilya is met by Rehart, who says, as if nothing has happened, that she looks absolutely gorgeous today. The man asks Lady Blondine if she has always loved such dresses, but she only thinks of what she could only find in this fool. Rehart, saying that he almost didn't recognize his bride, wanted to take the girl's hand, but the latter pulled him away and ordered him not to touch her. The unmarried groom asked the lady if she was crazy. He thought all her anger had subsided by now. After all, he'd said he hadn't cheated on her. Ilya, keeping an exasperated look on the man's face, wonders at him if he is in his right mind to ask her such questions and talk to her like that. While the girl was saying that his apology was pointless and he didn't need to take her so lightly, she remembered about the cufflink she should give to this trash, from whom she expected a lot of things. Rehart, on the other hand, asks her to stop discussing it because he thinks she's overreacting to everything. This infuriated the girl even more, and now she was convinced that this man had not an ounce of shame or conscience in him. But she decides to remain patient to give him the jewelry, the box she's already opening. But the attention of the gentleman was attracted by a certain Mr. Evantion, who had not appeared at the banquets for a long time, but here he attended the ball with his visit. The protagonist notices a tall brunette in the crowd, about whom it is said that even the assistant who is always with him has also come. Lady Blondine hears the way some people are afraid to go up and say hello to him, because they've heard he's not particularly friendly. Karhan Evantion is the second son of Duke Evantion, about whom little is known. Ilya had heard that he had deposed and taken the place of his older brother, the rightful heir. Karhan is an assassin who has not shed a drop of his blood and tears on the battlefield. His rotten personality got rid of his brother for his own ambition. Most of the rumors about him are strictly negative. The girl realizes that this is the first time she meets Karhan, but can't make out his face in the crowd yet. But the heroine suddenly remembered that she didn't have time to think about it now because she had something urgent to tell Rehart. But her plans were cut short, for the man's attention turned to Mr. Tresian. The lady realizes that now is not the best time to talk, as Tresian is a Rehart-bound man. Mr., who first greeted Ilya's fiancée, soon noticed her himself, saying that she looked simply gorgeous. Suddenly, Rehart put his arm around the girl's shoulder and said that naturally it was so, because his bride is a real beauty. Lady Blondine is disgusted by the fact that this vile type is pulling his hands on her like this. She decides to leave quickly, as this is not the time for their conversation. But here, Mr. Tresian takes this opportunity to ask about when it will be possible to rent the villa they were talking about. One of the girls says she would like to visit the dressing room, so she asks Rehart to use his name. Thoth cheerfully says he'll get it done soon, so they have a little while to wait. The frustrated groom then asks Ilya Blondine if she has understood everything about what these gentlemen wish to do. But the heroine abruptly breaks free from the cheating man's embrace and questions whether he intends to use her and why she needs to help him. Rehart, who was stunned at this reaction from the girl, awkwardly reminded of a certain promise for which she must now fulfill his request. Miss Blondine, smiling slyly at her abuser right in the face, smugly says he can figure it all out himself. The girl then runs out of the hall, even though the man has tried countless times to stop her. Ilya, having moved to the balcony and downed a few sips of champagne, is angry that she can't even return that bedbug's cufflink, let alone have a serious conversation about breaking off the engagement. With a look of sadness on her face, she realizes that she is insanely tired of dealing with an abomination like Rehart. The mistress wonders why she should return anything to him at all. So, about to throw the cufflink away, she says she'd rather just get rid of it. But she fails to execute the action to the end as her attention is diverted to Karhan, who for some reason has also popped up on the balcony. From surprise and unexpectedness, the protagonist did not even immediately recognize the man's face. She doesn't understand why he ended up here with her. Ivanchin, covering his face with his hand, apologizes to the lady and says that he knew she was here but was in too much of a hurry. Already touching the doorknob with his hand, he says he will leave the girl alone right now. But the woman suddenly asked him to wait, and the man turned to her puzzled. Ilya makes it clear that she sees that something has happened to him, so she lets him stay for a while. Ivantion's eyes instantly displayed surprise and excitement. He thanked the lady for her kindness. Examining the stranger, the heroine assumed he was standing off to the side so she wouldn't feel uncomfortable. Karhan seems very dazzling to her in the sunset rays. But taking a closer look at his facial expression, it seems to the girl more and more that he looks like he's feeling out of sorts. Lady Bloden wondered if she should be honest, and if she should tell the man that he was quite threatening looking. But at that moment, words were heard from Ivantion apologizing to the mistress for last time. You didn't know what he meant at first. Ilya quickly remembered that this was about the time Karhan had offered her money for her help. The young man admits that he made a mistake and didn't think his proposal would upset the lady so much. The girl, on the other hand, thinks he shouldn't regret it. As she expected, this guy is pretty honest. Blodin asked why he had chosen to reward her. Ivantion replied that he felt he should have thanked her appropriately for her help, for rewards were loved by all, and goodness was never free. Based on the man's words, the protagonist can safely assume that he has never accepted kindness gratuitously. She imagined how complicated his life could be, so she reassured Karhan that her help was only a favor. The man did not understand her, so the lady explained that she was not his servant or subordinate, which meant she did not need to be rewarded, especially not with money. The Crown Duke seconded the lady's opinion. The next minute there was a brief pause between them, which embarrassed Mrs. Bloden. The heroine decided to save the situation and ask her interlocutor what made him run to the balcony. Ivantion was obviously embarrassed by such a question, so the girl said that if he was uncomfortable, he could choose not to answer. But the man did admit that one lady wants to get engaged to him and keeps following him everywhere, making him feel uncomfortable. Ilya suggested it might be from the banquet, so she asked if she was stalking him, to which he said her actions were discouraging. Karhan says that once he fails to get in touch with her, the lady immediately shows up at his house, sometimes without even considering the time of the day. Even if he tells this girl where he's going, she still follows him, disguised in different guises. And this stalker gets angry when Ivantion is around other people. Frowning his eyebrows heavily, the young man adds that he had recently visited his family, and she had started meddling in all his affairs as if she thought she was his wife. According to the man, this girl completely ignores all his requests, for which he is afraid that it will only get worse. In her mind, the protagonist considered this lady a true stalker. Lady Bloden says this is all very serious and he should have spoken to his family. But when Ilya started talking about her family, she noticed how her companion's mood became gloomy and sad, so she didn't risk talking about her further. Karhan was interested when the young lady said that she too was going through a difficult time because of her fiancé, because he had betrayed her. Right now, the protagonist wants to open the balcony door and shout to Rehart to break the engagement, but she is hindered by her less-than-high status. Unexpectedly, the balcony doors swung open. It turned out to be a dark-haired girl who grabbed Karhan as if she had been looking for him for a long time. The stranger scolds the young man that he should have told her he went to the balcony, for she was surprised at his sudden disappearance. The stalkeress loudly called out to the man who was confused by her sudden appearance. Suddenly hearing the name of the guy she had been chatting with for the past few minutes, the realization came to Ilya immediately that she had seen him somewhere before. She guesses that Ivantion is the same man who bought the music box at the store, and he's also the same demon warrior. While the protagonist was trying to figure out what kind of circus was going on, the brunette who spotted her irritably asked Karhan who she was. But the man, drenched in sweat, did not utter a word, which made the hysterical woman even more perplexed. The stalkeress, noticing the light shade of her rival's hair, immediately realized that Lady Bloden was standing in front of her. Ilya, on the other hand, really wanted to pretend to know, but in reality she had no idea who this girl was. However, looking at the look on Ivantion's face, the heroine can deduce that the very female stalker he mentioned has arrived. It seems to her that the appearance of this lady has upset the man. Ilya realizes that getting involved is not going to lead to anything good. so she decides to take action. She says goodbye sweetly, hoping to leave sooner rather than later. But the stalkeress brutally blocked her passage, telling her that she wouldn't just leave, since she was flirting with someone else's fiancé a second ago. Miss Blondine was not much startled by the girl's insolence, but slightly upset. Her opponent, on the other hand, furiously asks if she knows her name. With great pride, the stalker declares that she is Karhan's fiancée, and her name is Stella Delata. As soon as the girl said her name, the protagonist immediately recalled a certain incident with the carriage design. The lady remembered that the Delot were a clan with whom her family had long been under contract, and the incident of the carriage design was the most memorable of all. A few years ago, the Blodin family launched the luxury carriages, but before show day itself, the design was stolen. The family had to make a new one in short order, and the final choice was up to the little protagonist. Although people expressed disapproval because of the bold design, the trust of the parents made its creation possible. And at the same time, Delot was introduced to a new crew, with a design stolen from Blodin. They had suspicions, but no clear evidence. In contrast, the carriage was advertised as having been developed over several years. The newspapers said that the Delot family spent 3 whole years on the job. Ilya recalls that they started sales with the same confidence, but failed miserably after the design presentation. Mistress knows that Stella is the only daughter of the Delot family, and there were rumors before her that she has really changed, for she was chubby as a child. Arms crossed, Blodin thinks things are different when it comes to her enemy, though she wanted to avoid political battles because they're boring. But since the stalkeress herself had begun to provoke her, Ilya, with a note of mockery, calls out to her rival, letting her know that she recognized her. While the heroine anticipates the fun, Karan quickly backed away to a safe distance like a frightened bear cub. Stella angrily asked the girl what she was doing on the balcony with her man, but the girl wondered what she meant. The rival makes it clear that she knows about all of Miss Blodin's tricks, because she is aware that she was in the same space with her lover. Ilya calmly says that Miss Delot seems to lack confidence if she suspects someone without reason. She reminds the stalker that since she broke into someone else's vacation spot, she should provide at least some evidence. The mistress cites the fact that she could at least catch them kissing as an example, remembering how she herself had caught Rehart doing so in the past. Ilya further hints that she shouldn't consider herself Evantian's bride because there are only engagement rumors going on. But her next question made Stella bite her tongue. She wondered if she was so worried because she didn't trust her fiancé. Miss Delot, excusing herself that it was not as he had thought, looked at Karen's face, which, to her surprise, was as if embittered. Shivering with fear, the girl asked her lover if he was angry, to which he answered nothing. The protagonist, on the other hand, thought it wasn't, noticing the way the man moved his lips, preparing to say something, but Stella suddenly blurted out that she wanted to be the first one to leave him. Not wanting Karhan to be angry, she persists in making one promise after another that she will leave him, and not because she doesn't trust him. After her retort, Miss Delot actually turned away from the Crown Duke and hurriedly ran out of the balcony. While Mr. Evantian looked puzzled at the departing lady, Ilya sadly said that it ended rather dull. The young man then shifted his gaze to Lady Blodin, and the latter warned that she couldn't just stand by and wait for her rival to get into the fray first. Suddenly, an unaccustomed word is heard from the man. He suggests that the protagonist is a very confident girl. Ta thought it was sarcasm at first, but what she heard from Karhan afterward was that he was jealous of that quality of hers. The lady had not expected such a confession from a man whose father was the most famous among the nobility, and whose Karhan was his only heir. The young lady believes that he is the opposite of a man who can be more confident than anyone else. The girl says she didn't expect to hear words of envy from him. Evantian, on the other hand, says cryptically that confidence is what he lacks. The young man admits that he himself does not know whether he will fit the role of heir or not, because everyone is afraid of him. Society considers him a bloodthirsty killer, arrogant and impatient, a ruthless and cold-blooded man who destroyed his own brother to become the heir. But the first impression that this man made on the main character is completely different from all the rumors. Ilya notes that Karhan is well-mannered and doesn't even brag about his high status. Instead, he seemed like a little bear cub that happened to be stuck in the middle of a battle between 2 giants. Blodin thought about the fact that at this time, she was giving the mistaken impression of a good person, and this man had the diametrically opposite. Out of the blue, Evantian asked the girl if she was afraid of him. Miss Blodin asked nonchalantly why she should be afraid of him. She thinks it doesn't matter how fierce he looks outwardly, but as long as she observes him decently, his facial expression gradually becomes readable. The girl asks my lord if it is true that although he was angry earlier, he was excited. The one was very surprised at these common words, so Ilya added that she had a good instinct for such things. She apologizes if she's offended him in any way. But the man, rubbing his fingers excitedly, admitted that she was the first person to get it right the first time. Evantion says he's used to misunderstandings and doesn't talk much, so he rarely holds a conversation with someone for this long. He suggests it might be because his face looks pretty awful. Miss Bloden was so surprised by this that her eyes completely widened, because looking at Karan, she can't even remember the meaning of the word horrible. She figures that if this handsome man thinks he's scary, there's no one in the empire whose face could be shown. The girl puts her head on the fact that people confuse him with a mannequin from the atelier. Trying to hide the confusion the man had caused her with his phrase, the heroine asked why he thought that. The one replied that people freeze when they see his face. In her thoughts, the lady assumed it was because of the ominous spirits. Ilya suggests that Karan think about smiling more often, because if his facial expression softens, it might help. The young man decided to take his friend's advice and tried to smile, but it came out too creepy and villainous. He asked if his expression had softened, but she just stood there and couldn't find the words, because it was really serious. Ilya believes that with his status, there is no need to make an effort to change, and if people recognize his true personality, they may underestimate him. She thinks keeping his appearance could be beneficial, and even if the rumors are true, no one would say anything to his face. The heroine felt resentful that it was as if all of Karhan's social status had been wasted, but then it hit her. She remembered about social status. Approaching Evantion, the girl asks if he wants to dispel all the misunderstandings that make people scared of him. Approaching the young man, my lady hints that perhaps she can help him with this. He was interested in her offer, but the young lady added that in return he would make a deal with her. Ilya says that by teaming up, they will help each other break up their burdensome engagements. The protagonist asked the man what he thought of it, and whether he thought the condition was good and favorable. The girl shares that she is planning to get away from her fiancé, and Reckart probably doesn't want to bond with her either. Karan, on the other hand, expressed his skepticism about the idea. Then Bloden reminded him that if he didn't agree, he risked marrying his stalker girlfriend. She intimates to Evantion that she's known Delat for a long time and is sure that her obsession is only getting bigger as time goes on, especially after the wedding. Picking up her fur coat, the girl says that still she doesn't expect him to answer right away, but to give him some time to reflect. Leaving the balcony, she suggests that the man see her in 3 days at 2 o'clock at the Central Clock Tower on Redison Street to voice his response. Meanwhile, at the ball, the fun is in full swing. The nobles enjoying champagne, chatting merrily on various topics. Back at the banquet, Lady Bloden was spotted by her subordinate Francis. He was very excited to have her back and asked how it went. The main character smiled sweetly at the guys and modestly said that it went pretty well. But when Madame recalled the unpleasant incident with Rehart, she confessed that she had actually had a bit of trouble. Francis wanted to teach his mistress's abuser a lesson, but his partner Malik stopped him in time, arguing that he would get Ilya in trouble. The main character waved her hand and said she was fine and no one should worry about her. Looking up to stare ominously at her main enemy Rehart, she says that she has already taken care of her revenge. Under the twinkling light of the stars in the night sky, the young lady proudly leaves the imperial palace and its sumptuous festivities. In the morning, rubbing her head in her sleep, Miss Bloden is surprised that she hasn't had hard liquor in a while, as she is now severely hungover. A maid knocks on my lady's door. She enters with a breakfast cart. She wishes the girl good morning and says that young Mr. Henley has ordered this dish to be brought when her sister gets out of bed. Elijah thought she and her brother would be embarrassed after that conversation, but he seemed to accept her apology and worry about her. The heroine enjoys eating soup for breakfast, which even makes her heart feel warmer. Having had her fill of the dish, the lady gives the dishes to the servant and asks her to tell Henley that she enjoyed them very much. Bloden thought about the fact that apologizing to her brother would be a good idea, and they could get along like they used to. She's thinking radically. Now, for the sake of her family, she's willing to peacefully break off her engagement to Rehart. And for her desired goal to come to fruition, she needs the status of Mr. Evantion. The girl realizes that she has been presented with a rare opportunity that she must not miss. No one like Rehart can stand up to Karhan. In return for using the latter as a shield, her family can provide far greater riches than the Earl de Lot family. Milady imagines it's a kind of equal exchange, giving and receiving what they need from each other. Ilya, on the other hand, thinks that she has no need to feel guilt towards the de Lots. After putting on her slippers and getting out of bed, the girl's first goal is that she needs to get Evanchan's consent. Milady pondered and concluded that with those conditions it was like a lottery draw. 3 days later, the big day came for the main character. In the square of the city, warmed by the rays of the sun, the social life is in full swing. Ilya, sitting in her carriage and gazing out over the square, looked at the clock that showed 1 in the afternoon. There was a full hour left before her meeting with Karhan, perfect for her to have time to finish all her business. As suddenly, in the crowd among passers-by, the girl notices a recognizable dark, tall silhouette. Looking closer, Lady Bloden recognized the stranger as Mr. Evanchan, standing as if waiting for someone. She asked the coachman to stop the carriage, while pondering that usually high-ranking nobles would deliberately arrive later than the appointed time. Glamorously stepping out of the carriage, the heroine suggested that Karhan was indeed an overly cautious man, and it looked like she might have to put her affairs on hold. Suddenly, an unforeseen thing happens on the lady's path. An old man on a stick falls and drops his bag of apples, which are scattered all over the ground. A man comes to the victim's aid and helps him pick apples. The old man first thanks the man for his help, but as soon as the grandfather saw Evanchan's face, he immediately fell into a bow and began desperately asking that he give him the apples he had bought for his family. The noise was noticed by passers-by. People thought that a high-ranking nobleman was trying to take food from a commoner. The Crown Duke hears society's condemnation. They are outraged that there could be someone like him in the world and with such a ferocious appearance. Ilya notices Karhan's reaction, which shows that he's used to misunderstandings, but she realizes that doesn't mean he's okay. After picking all the apples himself, the old man quickly ran away, afraid that the man would do something bad to him. Mr. Evanchan turned his attention to Miss Bloden, who appeared beside him and greeted him. The girl inquired what time he had come, and the young man said he had appeared quite recently. The young lady smiled when asked by her if he knew there was a whole hour left before the meeting, the man said he had come early just in case. Looking at Karhan, Ilya thinks that even though he knows he will be misunderstood, he still continues to help others. He doesn't flaunt his power like other nobles, and is a good man in his own right. She doesn't know how he managed to keep his true self. A girl lies to a man about coming in early because her business was canceled. The young lady suggests the interlocutor move to another place, because she doesn't think they should talk in a prominent place. Evanchan thought about his friend's suggestion for a moment, but then agreed. The couple walked into a modest establishment, where they sat down at a cozy table near the window. While the lady was leafing through the menu, the waiter asked the guests what they wanted. The man said it would be the same as my lady. Ilya gave the waiter the menu and asked him to make them 2 cups of milk tea. When the worker left, Karhan said he was surprised at how quiet it was. The girl revealed a secret. She asked that no one be let into the room. The Crown Duke asked if that meant she had rented the place, to which Blondine replied that it was her store. She says she bought all the nearby stores 2 days ago and their store is quiet, so this place will be a good base. The young lady asked Evanchan why he had come without a bodyguard, and he replied that he couldn't show up because of some business, and besides, people wouldn't even think of approaching him. The maid was just serving tea to the guests when the protagonist decided to cut to the chase. Lady asked her partner what he had decided in those 3 days. She recalls that she then decided to make a deal with him. They are supposed to help each other break their engagements, but in fact, Evanchan's engagement is still under discussion. Suddenly the man says he came to meet her only to reject her proposal. For the girl, this phrase was so unexpected and shocking that she did not believe her ears the first time. Karhan explains that he can't break the engagement of his own accord, so he feels he must renege on her deal. Though the young man said it, judging by his stilted demeanor, Lady Ilya guesses that he actually wishes otherwise. She clarified if he really had no desire to break the engagement. Toth replied that his family was currently negotiating about it, and he didn't want to cause them any trouble. Miss Bloden said she was not interested in outside reasons, but his own opinion. The Lord seemed surprised at her words, and she added that it was not someone else's engagement, but his, and he alone should decide for it. Karhan fell silent, and Ilya reminded him that she would not insist if it was his decision. She asked if he really wanted to marry Delot, because it seemed to her that he was putting up with everything. Mr. Evantian excitedly said he didn't know if he dared to make a discretionary decision. The girl, on the other hand, asked puzzledly what problems could prevent him from doing so. Opening the sugar bowl, she admits that until recently she was just like him. Chucking sugar cubes into her tea, Ilya says that in the past, she couldn't make even minor decisions and always tried to be like everyone else. But at one point she realized that she didn't want to do that anymore because she was becoming unhappy because of it. The man was taken aback by his friend's words. Rubbing his hands together nervously, he wonders what other people would say to that if they noticed. The ladies calmly replied that even if they criticized her, there was still nothing they could do, and no one would live her life for her. Mistress suggests that Evanthion just tell her she fooled him if he's afraid to make a decision on his own. She promises that if anything goes wrong, she's willing to take responsibility for everything. Karhan says that Milady seems like a good person to him, and he wants to trust her and try to change too because he doesn't have the strength to fool himself anymore. With firm confidence and pride in his face and words, the Lord said he accepted her offer. His interlocutor smiled and complimented him on thinking things through properly. Ilya offers him a glimpse of a contract that will require them to voluntarily pose as lovers for an agreed-upon amount of time. Under the terms of the contract, they must not have another partner, are obliged to help each other in breaking off the engagement, and not tell anyone the contents of the contract. She warns that she may adjust the contents of the agreement, so she asks Karhan to read it and let her know if he doesn't like it. Miss Bloden says they basically have to portray a couple in love, and there may be negative rumors in the beginning that will fade with time. Swimming in a sea of doubt, the Crown Duke asked why things had to be this way. His partner answered very simply, because there was no objective reason to break off the engagement. She says she wants to prevent the engagement, but the groom has a higher status than her. Plus, the chosen one has ties to the imperial family. And if the protagonist acts without any precautions, it will surely backfire. The girl tells the man that this is why she wants to use his status as a shield. Ilya knows that Rehart Tertian is weak in front of someone stronger. And if her new partner happens to be the heir to Evantian, naturally the groom's supporters will be more cautious. The Tertian family won't be able to take action so easily against the Karhan family, who are higher in status than them. Bloden assures him that since his ducal family wants him engaged, in that case, she would be a better option than Stella Delot. The protagonist realizes that the Duke's family may oppose her at first, but still they recognize her because she has no flaws, unlike Stella. The man asked if they would pretend to be lovers for life, to which the girl looked at the contract clause and said it was only for 1 year. The lady promises that they will only play lovers for this time, and she will prepare countermeasures in the meantime. Studying the document, Lord Evantian asked his friend what would happen if he tried to break the contract. Ta replied with a sly smile that he would find out then as soon as he tried it. Karhan took the hint from his mistress and did not ask anything more, but simply said he would sign the contract. A short time later, the document bore 2 signatures, those of the Crown Duke of Evantian and Miss Bloden. The heroine suggested that her friend tell everyone that they fell in love with each other at first sight because people might suspect something wrong. Karhan replied that it would be difficult for him, but he would try. Ilya solemnly says that he is now in charge of status and she is in charge of wealth, and so began a fake relationship that shook the entire empire. Madame puts the signed contract into an envelope. She is pleased that she was able to make an agreement. But as she looks at her lover, she thinks about the fact that when people find out how soft his temper is, they will probably start to underestimate him. Ilya wanted to distract her friend, so she told him that the tea was delicious since she had hired a special person who was good at brewing it. Lady thinks that as long as people are thinking about Karhan the wrong way, it might be convenient to use him as a shield, but there's a but. Bloden tells the young duke that since he has signed a contract, she can help him solve problems too. The man was surprised when the lady said he mentioned the misunderstanding he faces because of his looks. He asked if she had memorized it, to which she said she had, and that she had promised to help him with it. Rising from her chair, Ilya vows to herself to personally take care of those who approach Mr. Karhan with impure intentions. The heroine suggests that her friend go out and buy him some new clothes to try to change his style, so that people can approach him more easily. The couple was strolling down a street of men's clothing boutiques. The girl asked him what styles he preferred, to which he replied that he had no preference. Madame then suggested that he had only black clothes in his closet, and Karen asked in surprise how she knew. Ilya drew this conclusion because she had only seen him in black all the time. Remembering something, Blodin turned to Avanteon to remind him that there was a clause in the contract that they were to be each other's faithful lovers. The young man replied that he remembered the paragraph, at which point his lover asked him to come to her and walk beside her. Karan was confused by this, but he immediately ran closer. But suddenly someone's angry shout was heard behind the couple's backs. It turned out to be Rihart himself, who happened to be strolling nearby, holding an unknown lady in his arms. He was very surprised to meet his sister-in-law unexpectedly. Pushing his companion farther away, he once again tells Ilya that she's got it all wrong and he can explain. The protagonist does not understand why she was lucky enough to meet this loser now. She is forced to listen to her fiancé tell her that they broke up on a bad note last time and he would like to make it up to her by giving her a gift. But Rihart makes the excuse that he doesn't know what women like, so he decides to seek help from the girl he was walking with. Blodin completely broke his confidence when she reminded him that he was looking for a gift for her in an alley filled with men's clothing stores. She says they've been together for years, but he still doesn't know what she likes. Plus, he needs help from a strange woman. The girl is convinced that they really have a superficial relationship, but wishes Rihart to take it easy, because whatever he says will sound like an excuse. The guy was so angry that he pointed his finger at Avanteon and yelled that she herself was out with some man. Ilya pretended as if she was very surprised that she remembered something she had wanted to say to him for a long time. Taking Karan under her arm, she introduces the groom to the man she loves dearly, Crown Duke Avanteon. Rihart was terrified. They say that if you offend him, he can kill without blinking an eye. He recalls people at the ball talking about this man who used to be called a killer on the battlefield. But the worst part, if you stare at Karhan for more than 3 seconds, you can prepare for him to slit anyone's throat. Guy doesn't understand how Ilya could have met the Avantian heir. The protagonist, meanwhile, happily says she fell in love with a young man at first sight and believes it's fate. She asked her lover if it was true, to which he, smiling gently, agreed. Rihart was overwhelmed with the emotion of anger. He asked the girl if she was lying, hoping to hear a comforting answer. But that one said she wasn't lying in the slightest, but instead was sure she was boring him. The failed groom is convinced that Ilya is lying to him. He can't believe she loves someone other than her and a battlefield killer. He recalls how Mrs. Blodin used to smile at him stupidly, and she liked him enough to be able to ask her for anything. The guy gritted his teeth nervously with the firm thought that he wasn't going to let the girl slip away like that. Suddenly, the mistress tells the hater what she has long wanted to voice back at the banquet. She wishes to break her engagement to him. This phrase literally infuriated Rihart. He questioned her angrily, as if he couldn't believe his own ears. But the heroine nonchalantly walked past him with her new lover, saying she would send him a letter of demands when it was ready. Thoth angrily tried to catch up to Ilya, reaching for her with his hand and shouting words about how she only dared to leave him. However, the traitor's hand was grabbed by Avanteon, who threw a look at the lad as if he would be a dead man in a moment. The lady nonchalantly told Karhan that she was fine. She asked to let Rihart go and continue walking. The man immediately obeyed his lover, after which the couple once again continued to go about their business. The hapless groom was left lying on the ground, resentfully cursing everything in this world. After a while, having moved far away from Rihart, Mr. Avanteon and Lady Blodin walked quietly along the road. The girl wanted to turn to the man, but for some reason he only flinched at being called out. Milady sternly reminds him that she asked him to walk beside her instead of constantly trailing behind. The young man, feeling guilty, ran up to Ilya in embarrassment. The heroine says she didn't expect to meet her ex so suddenly. She asks her lover if he is agitated. The one with obvious nervousness on his face replied that he had moved without realizing it himself, because Rihart had reached for her hand, and he didn't know what to do, so he instinctively grabbed it back. The girl chuckled at him, then thanked her partner for helping her. But after that, she says that regardless he needs to practice on his behavior, which confused Karhan. Boiling with excitement, the man asks if it was that bad. Ilya laughed knowingly, but said he did pretty well for a first-timer, and Rihart seemed to fall for it. But the next moment she thought about the fact that, to tell the truth, then it was too sudden. From the moment her fiancé appeared, it was as if Mr. Avantian had broken down. Fortunately, they were helped by the stern expression on his face. However, at this rate, it is only a matter of time before they are caught cheating. The heroine has no idea how Karhan managed to keep his character a secret. Meanwhile, at the bar, drowning out his problems with alcohol, Rihart puzzles over how Ilya could have traded him away. The man is sure she lied to him because he can't imagine his daughter-in-law falling in love with a fool like Karan. Remembering the incident when he found Lady Blondine on the ground unconscious, Mr. Tertian becomes convinced that he is her benefactor and savior. Rehart knows that he is the heir to the Marquis of Tertian, plus his father holds a high position in the imperial palace. And the palace itself is nothing more than a toy for this young nobleman, like a sandbox. One ordinary day, which was no different from any other, his life changed because he found a girl unconscious in the garden. When the unfortunate woman had been given the necessary care, Rehart decided to talk to her in the guest room. To his great joy, the girl he found in the garden with no sign of life turned out to be the youngest daughter of the Blondin family. Heir Tertian assumed that Ilya had come to thank him, but he would be uncomfortable if she suddenly suggested he keep in touch because she was not his taste. But here the lady, while her servant was dumping a whole pile of all sorts of riches on the table, says it's a small reward to him for saving her. The man greedily examines the jewelry, where a necklace is comparable to an imperial treasure, and one brooch is rumored to be worth as much as 3 stores. Rehart was aware that the Blondin family was wealthy, but he didn't think it was so much so that he would shower someone who just woken their daughter up in the garden with jewelry. In the guy's mind, the puzzle pieces are coming together. If he gets this woman, he'll be permanently wealthy. He tells the lady he did what he had to do. After that, the trickster began gathering information to win Ilya's heart. He'd been meeting with her on purpose, pretending it was just a coincidence. He also often complimented the girl's hobbies, pretending that they had much the same tastes. And then, months later, the protagonist with loving sparks in her eyes told Rehart that they had a lot in common. Toth agreed with her and said they got along quite well, satisfied that he was able to fool this innocent woman so easily. They got engaged right after becoming a couple and were already one step away from having a wedding. But Mr. Tertian suddenly decided that it was a disgrace to marry like this, being young and rich, to devote himself to just one. So he, following this logic, began to enjoy the nightlife and the red light district, and the money Ilya gave him, he used to win the favor of other women. This bedbug was even able to find a permanent partner who perfectly matched his taste. And during that fun time, the unexpected happened. He was caught cheating by his own fiancée. Rehart thinks that even though he was at fault in the situation, it was easier for him to blame it all on Ilya to keep things quiet. He realized that if she was getting sad just for a moment, she couldn't bear it without him, so there was no reason for the cheater to worry. The Tertian air was calm until another man, whom she introduced as her lover, appeared beside the heroine. Suddenly, the guy hears a conversation between 2 neighboring ladies who, while discussing their relationship problems, suggest that they might cause jealousy in their partner. Rehart hears the girl say that men get bored when they are treated well for a long time, and it is possible to create a sense of crisis through jealousy. The other girl supported her friend's idea, and then Rehart seriously considered it as well. He guesses that because of his affair with another woman, Ilya is trying to get his attention by using that man. The fellow realized that in this way his fiancées were supposedly trying to get a feeling of jealousy from him, so, rising contentedly from his chair, said that it was a rather nice idea on his lady's part. The wily heir decided that he too should similarly comfort his bride-to-be. The protagonist, in the meantime, has reached her native palace, near which she gets out of the carriage. She noticed the strange behavior of her servant Francis and asked him if he had anything to say to her. Toth ventured to ask the lady as well if she was all right, hinting at a contractual relationship with Mr. Evantion. Guy says he didn't notice it in the music box store, so he asked if she thought the lord was a dangerous man. Madam, on the other hand, asked her subordinate what impression Karan had made on him. This was a question Francis did not dare to answer. Then the girl says that she's already made her decision and they don't need to worry because he managed to chase Rehart away even better than she expected. Ilya calmly steps down the steps to the palace entrance and thinks about the fact that she said it in jest. But if Lord Evantion hadn't been around at that moment, who knows what trouble would have befallen her. Entering home, she asks her subordinates to keep everything that happened to her today a secret, to which they happily agreed. Suddenly, the heroine is called by 2 people, her father named Cliff Blondin and her mother Violetta Blondin. Mr. Cliff ran tearfully to his daughter, screaming about how he couldn't see her face before she left, because she wouldn't leave the room the whole time. The man clung to Ilya in a hug, amazed at how much she had gaunted. He pesters his daughter with questions about whether she's eating enough. Even though the girl said she was fine, Cliff Bloden still couldn't calm down. The heroine's fun with her father was interrupted by her mother, who sternly asked her daughter to move into the room to talk. It was noticeable that the girl and Cliff were a little startled by her mother's sternness, but the former still agreed to go with her. When the family moved to a separate room to talk, Mrs. Violetta asked her husband to sit next to her instead of fiddling with her daughter. The man immediately fulfilled his wife's whim, after which the woman asked Ilya what she had. Her mother's words did not please the lady. Her mother reminds her that she is about to be married, and there is nothing special about a little quarrel with Rehart. The mother asked what she had this time. The young mistress considered for a moment whether she should now reveal the fact that her fiancé was having an affair with another woman. Violet grabbed her head at having such a troubled son-in-law, and Cliff tried to calm his wife. With a glance at her parents, Lady Blodine still decided that she couldn't do that right now. Once her relatives know all about Rehart, they will become enraged and want to deal with him immediately. She just made a deal with Evantian, and they can't go up against the Tercian family without preparation. The girl clenched her fist resolutely. She decides to discuss the problems later, but for now to focus on the goal. Ilya tells her parents that she wants to talk in front of the whole family, including her older brother. Mistress expresses her regret in making a scene and causing trouble up to this point, then admits she wants to apologize again. Gathering her resolve, Madame voices a stunning verdict to Mom and Dad. She wishes to break off her engagement, and it's not just her whim. The daughter asked if it was possible, and Mrs. Violetta, smiling pleasantly, said that she had not heard something so pleasant for a long time. Her mother and father, of course, were happy about this, but began to ask Ilya the same questions as her brother, whether she was all right, for she had loved Rehart before. Then the protagonist admitted that there was nothing wrong with her. She just found another partner. Mrs. and Mr. Bloden were signally surprised at their child's sudden declaration. Cliff and Violetta began to whisper about whether their daughter had fallen in love with another strange guy. They decided to hear her out first, because it might be someone better than Rehart. The couple pretended that they hadn't just gossiped at all, after which they asked the heiress who her lover was now. Ilya confessed that it was the same bloodthirsty battlefield killer, the heir to the Evantian family. When this sounded, something happened to Cliff's father, causing the girl and her mother to shriek in fright, and the noise resounded throughout the palace. Meanwhile, in the Evantian family palace, the maidservants hiccuped and bowed fearfully as Mr. Evantian walked past them. Walking into his office, the man looked at himself in the mirror. He was dressed in a beautiful white suit that Miss Blodine had picked out for him. Lord recalls the words of that girl that the suit made the atmosphere around him more pleasant, and it would be even better if he practiced his facial expressions. The young man took her advice and tried to smile at his reflection, but he did so in such an intimidating way that the mirror cracked. Karhan thought frustratedly that even a plaster statue wouldn't have gotten as weird a smile as his. From his childhood, he recalls his mother's words when he brought her a cage in which a bird had died. She ordered him not to smile because it was disgusting. She tells her son that even though she gave birth to him, she has no idea what's in his head. His mother ordered him to get out immediately. The woman let tears flow and shouted to Karan that she didn't want to see him anymore. These childhood memories upset the man. He wants to succeed just as much as Lady Blodine, but if you think about it, she might be considered odd. At the music box store, she came to him first and offered to help at no cost. She was also upset that he tried to reward her for her help with money, and then she offered to make a deal where he and she would play each other's lovers. This girl showed Karhan a new opportunity in his life by telling him that he was capable of making his own decisions. Before meeting Ilya, Lord Evantian had always believed that his opinion didn't matter, because following the expectations of others was the right thing to do. In the past, deep in his heart ripened an inexplicable frustration. Would he wander aimlessly, or would he float along? And for such a man, a bright white hand was outstretched, radiating hope to make a difference. Karan accepted the hand extended to him because he too wants to change, just like Ilya. Suddenly, a young man named Tessian Herwin walks into the Lord's study. A subordinate is welcome with the Lord. The guy wanted to apologize for his long absence, as he suddenly noticed something strange that really shocked him. Mr. Evantian blushed when Tessian asked what was wrong with his clothes. The man asked if he looked strange in it. The subordinate replied that the costume was nice, but started cursing because he wasn't wearing black, intimidating clothes. There would be ill-wishers who would want to get close to him and take advantage of his kindness. Clutching his head, he is reminded once again that he needs to maintain his repulsive image, or everyone will quickly learn about his character. Taejin says irritably that if he didn't have an emergency, they would have gone to the banquet together. Suddenly, the young man notices a suspicious letter on the gentleman's desk, which he immediately grabs hold of with his hand. He pulled out Ilya's contract of fake love and began to read it out, marveling at the fact that the lord had already been drawn into some sort of lie in his absence. The boy demanded an urgent explanation from Karhan, coda to reading the lines about mutually benefiting each other in breaking the engagement. Evantian realized that there was nothing more he could hide, and he would have to tell everything. He mentally apologized to Lady Blondine. Taejin clutched his head dumbfounded again when the lord explained to him that he had entered into a secret contractual relationship. A subordinate asks about how Karhan could have taken such an important decision when he was not around. Suddenly, Karan speaks words that put Herwin in a stupor. He made this decision of his own free will. The young man prides himself on the fact that it was not another man's will, not a mistake, but Lord Evantian's personal decision. After calming down, the guy asked when he was going to meet Lady Blondine, to which the guy replied that in 4 days. The subordinate sternly says he'll go to a meeting with him to make sure the protagonist is trustworthy. As the men chatted, Ilya still had no way of calming Papa down from the sudden news of a new lover. That afternoon, as my lady was concluding her walk with Evantian, she inquired if they could meet again at the tea house. As the man puts up his hand to help the lady into the carriage, the lady says that, thankfully, Rehart seems to believe in their love. But she reminds her lover that he still needs to work on his behavior, and for that, they will need time to get to know each other. Karhan gave her a modest nod, after which the girl smiled and said that they would meet in 3 days. When the appointed day came, the protagonist began to get ready for the meeting and think that she was lucky to find a fake partner, but her next step is very problematic. The laws of the Empire require the consent of both parties to break an engagement, and there is a problem for her in how to get Rehart's approval. As a last resort, she could go to court, but that would take too long, and she wanted to get this over with as soon as possible. The maid's hands, which were brushing Madame's hair, trembled when someone knocked on the door. It turns out to be the servant Malik, who informs Ilya that a letter has come to her from the Imperial Palace. Ta asked for what reason. Holding out a letter to the lady, the man says that it concerns the tea house. After reading the contents of the letter, Lady Blondine decided that in that case, they should change the place where they would meet Mr. Karan. The girl asked for someone to be sent to the ducal litter of Evantian, and Malik accepted her orders. As she sat back down, the heroine thought about the fact that she had one meeting place that might be suitable. After a while in one of her stores, Ilya heard her guest arrive and immediately wanted to say hello, but she saw something unusual. In addition to Karan, Taejin also came to the meeting. Madame asked her partner who it was next to him, to which he replied that it was his assistant. The young man apologizes to his girlfriend for the fact that, because of his negligence, the terms of the contract were broken. Ilya contemptuously asked if his assistant could be trusted, to which the lord replied that he could, but she herself, looking at his judgmental gaze, feels that he is treating her with contempt. Blondine said that in that case it's okay because her escorts are also present and aware of everything. She extended her hand to Evantian's subordinate, introduced herself, and said it was a pleasure to meet him. The one shook his hand coldly and said his name was Taejin Herwin. The lady realized that it didn't seem to her that he was treating her suspiciously. Taejin then hinted that changing the meeting place on the appointed day was disrespectful to them, and Karhan tried to moderate his behavior. The subordinates were angered by the guy's behavior, but Mistress waved them off, hinting that it was okay. She apologizes for the abrupt change of venue. The lady admits the matter is that she received an official letter from the palace today, stating that her store has been declared a redevelopment zone and entry is strictly forbidden. The compensation for the store would be 1 million krol, much to Taejin's surprise. The girl added that there may be more such situations in the future. Lady Blondine says she would appreciate their understanding in advance, because she is a bit lucky in life. She asks her guests to sit down, warning them that she won't be able to treat them as the place is hastily chosen. She asks Francis to bring something to drink. As Evantian settled into a chair, the girl smilingly suggested that we get to the most important part. But she's interrupted by Tercian, who says he has something to tell her first. Ta said she was listening to him carefully. Suddenly, while putting a document on the table, the guy asks the lady to cancel her contract with Karan, explaining that he doesn't like to get involved in any problematic cases. With a look of great disdain in his gaze, the subordinate says that he knows her true intentions, so he asks that the Lord not be dragged into this. The protagonist, with not a single emotion showing on her face, thought this guy looked more like Avantion's guardian than an assistant. She says something that puzzles both men. The girl asks about whether Karhan really doesn't like to get involved with other people. Ilya declares that Tessian, as the Lord's aide, should be aware of the unsavory rumors that surround his lord, and in such a situation, a whole host of misunderstandings can arise. The protagonist makes it clear that she strongly doubts that this is Avantion's own wish and not his.